Many thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Namibia Connects. Now, a senior architectural technologist, artist, and researcher, 24-year-old Takudzwa Mukesi, developed a masquerade mask of the African ritual culture as an extension of his master thesis. The mask is an entity or element that defines identity in the African craft culture. Mukesi now joins us in studio to unpack this and more. Takudzwa, thank you for being with us. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Firstly, let's take a few steps back. Pardon me. Okay. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us a bit about yourself first and foremost here.
Just to introduce myself once more. My name is Takudzwa Mukesi. I'm an artist. I would call myself a multi-disciplinary, multi-sensory artist.
Nice.
I dabble in visual arts, design, architectural film, and so much more. I think that's like the basis. I'm also a basketball player, so I'm just like trying to be a jack
quite a number of hats.
Yeah, true.
Where did your passion and love for the arts, come from?
I think
your dad has a medical background.
That is true. Yeah. I think my just general love for art was just through people. Yeah. I think, to be honest, it also comes from my religion, right? So I'm Christian. So yes. I think for me, it's cool that I always wanted these artists that always describe art as like to engage with the transcendent and to engage with God. So I always try to sort for that, to how do I meet God? So if painting is the way, so let painting be the way.
But you also have a strong attachment to culture and, ethnicity, yes. Who we are as an African people. Yeah. How do you strike a balance? Because oftentimes you find, people seeing it as conflicting, I guess, so to say, with religion and African culture. And how do you blend the two?
I actually realized that there is a purity to whatever thing that God's put into the world. So if it was something that was bad, that wasn't supposed to be found, in my perspective, I think there's always purity or like the childlike approach to anything.
Yes.
So I also do think like there is a synergy, just like how religion and science was separated once.
By human beings.
Exactly. So I do think like there's also certain, I also see like prayer as ritual. So I always try to purify everything and try to study everything and be honest to what everything is, but with God at the end, So I'm trying to do that,
Talking about studying, and of course you pursued a course in the arts, yes?
Yes.
Talk to us about your academic journey.
I basically accomplished, or I finished my master's in architecture. Yeah. Now I'm doing my PhD, which is problematic, but I do enjoy it. So when I was in high school, I actually didn't do art. I did technical graphics.
Oh, nice.
So it was almost like the beginning of a nuclear relationship that had to become when I'm now who I am now. So I think that basically breaks down what it is now.
And you're only 24 years old.
Yes.
I say only because you've accomplished so much at such a young age, and you're already pursuing your PhD.
Yes.
Where does that need to accomplish so much, especially academic-wise, even come from him?
I think for me, I don't really see it as I was not really a bright student in high school. I think my curiosity. So it's like the higher you go, the more challenges and the more broader everything becomes. So I think that's what I was trying to really go for in relation to doing my master's, because it allowed me to have the freedom to push more boundaries and do these more things. So that's where it comes from. So the reason I'm doing my PhD is also to sit with people and be like, no, but rituals are pretty cool. Yeah. But you sit in the same circle with streetwear people and you're like, masks are really cool. Why don't we translate them? But it's those hats that I try to see how far you can push them. That allows me to do much.
Fantastic stuff. Talking about masks, of course, this was part of your thesis, your master's thesis.
Yes.
Talk to us about this.
So the mask actually got born after my master's, which is an exploration to character. Yeah. So after designing these spaces for the old location people, I realized, it's cool, but I should realize the shortfall in what I was doing. So I kind of had to fill up the gaps. I went back and read it again, so I had to fill up the gaps of what do I need to do? And character was really one of them. Nice. So I tend to take the mask into contemporary times and say, how do actually people take character? So it was from environmental based design, as we want to call it, architecture, to looking at the people and seeing how people are actually sites themselves and how stories are molded up.
Fantastic
around
stuff.
that, yeah.
Especially with a strong focus on African rituality.
Yes.
What does that mean to you, Ian?
I think it actually came from, if I had to be honest, it came from me reading a lot of art history, and it's always like the Western world, which I do not have any hate over. Yeah. I appreciate how far they have pushed the boundaries, but I also feel like there's something that was lost within the process. So if you go into like concept art, for instance, you realize it's more rituals, right? Like, but they do it in a performative way. Yeah. Then I was like, in our home space, there's so much that's happening, and there's so much boundaries to be pushed. How do you go about that? So I really engaged with the rituals and got really curious on how these things are actually happening, and reading certain writers that say day to day is a ritual. And I was like, oh, okay, let's get into that a bit more.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
And of course, you combine a number of elements in your designs.
Yes.
Talk to us about that creative process and, the inspiration behind that. Yeah.
I think for me, I always, just like how life is, like how I'm speaking to you and I have to look at you and then have to be like engaging with your body. I also feel like that's how I approach design in relation to everything is multidimensional. True. And every trade, I'm like a geek in art in general. So I listen to, like, let's say Kendrick Lamar, I listen to Oliver Mtukudzi, and I watch people like the great masters. There's Hage Neshungo here, who's really doing really well. Then there are international people that are doing really well as well. So I look at everything and I'm like, if you can encompass the same feeling within different mediums, then it means that each medium is missing a certain component of that emotion, right? Yeah. So I try to stitch all these components together to get a holistic. If sadness is sadness, if a musician says sadness is this, if it's tears, then for a musician it might be sound.
It might be sound.
For a visual artist, it might be your face on how you look and so on. So I try to make a whole moment where it encompasses all of that at the same time. Yeah.
And how have people responded to your work here?
I think one of the best experiences that I've had was my friend crying to my art once. So I was like, that was like me being like, oh, at least someone encountered the transcendent, how I feel or how I want. So I think the general response is really just amazement. Usually it's just like, oh yeah, this is really cool. But I also try and push for people to be like exposed to another way of approaching art, not the traditional way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Obviously, visual arts has, evolved quite a bit, with the introduction of new technologies, etc., as well, new techniques, and just generally the new ways of doing things.
Yes.
How do you, use these new methods and new technologies and still capture that, a very essence of Africa,
Yes. So with my principles and my masters, I kind of broke it down because I was approaching it in that way. Yeah. Then I realized there are certain components, like, for example, the character was a way to transcend. So you kind of have to, the person as a motif in these cases is very critical. Yeah. But how the person is translated throughout the process is also really important as well. So you tend to then describe the person as a certain component within the digital space, besides removing totally the person and saying the art. There was I think an amazing quote that someone said, when machines make art, that means there was a person who programmed the machine to do the same. Exactly. So I think the human component has to be traced throughout. So that's what I try to reveal, that there's a human component through Africa and how to describe it, and then translate it through technology. It can take a leap of its own.
And I know I shouldn't ask this to creatives and to artists, especially because they always find it difficult. But is there a favorite piece of yours, that really speaks to you? And what does it say to you? And where were you in that state of mind at that point in time, etc.? Is there an artwork of yours that stands out for you truly?
Like as you said, it's a difficult one. But I think my greatest piece was. I think the piece with the big lady that I exhibited at the Creative Asylum was one encounter with emotion, because I really was going for it with intent. I really wanted the pitch that my friend cried to, basically, was like a documentation of like the the kids that walk around the streets selling. I think the Himba kids, if I'm not, that was the most striking piece, but it was the most biggest one. So every time I look at it and marvel. I feel like I'm also experiencing, because I tried to replicate my master's that I was studying at the time. And I kind of would say I didn't manage, but you could never. But I think I tried to assimilate it to what I was doing and what I could be doing. So it was really cool to be able to do that.
Fantastic, inspirational, man.
I really do appreciate that.
I hear a lot of, I don't know if this is a word, but Africanness within you. I hear, your attachment to the continent, to us as a people and who we are, and the importance of preserving that. Am I right in saying that? And what does, in a world where so many things are being diluted, cultures are being diluted, traditions are being diluted, etc., how important is it through the work that you do to capture and maintain that Africanness?
I do think, obviously, there's a general appreciation to when people then say, like, things have to be, how do I put it? Things have to be modernized or have to move with the times. And I do feel like it comes from my favorite verse where God says, we all have to worship in spirit and in truth. And in Africanness, within our culture, we are being truthful of who we are and what we do, right? But also we have to appreciate the fact that we have evolved through time and we have been influenced so much. And I feel like the world now is getting to be one big person that I do feel like what the verse says in the Bible, like, what if the eye then envies to be the mouth? Then what does the eye actually do, right?
Exactly.
Or what does the mouth envy the feet? And so what I'm trying to do in terms of the whole world and continent is really just acknowledge each piece of what this big body of art is, what the Western people are doing for us, or what the African people. So for me being African, I'm trying to kind of understand what part we are in the body and what like acknowledgement we do before it's watered down. So I do take very, very like high homage into our work as Africans, but right now there's no one. It's like untapped potential. So I'm in that potential and I'm like, guys, you must understand there's so much here. So that's what I'm trying to educate. And I'm also inspired by kids. So I try to show the whole quote of like, we're in Africa, like watering it down. I try to show the kids that there's high level and reverence to greatness in Africa as much as it is anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. Takudzwa, amazing stuff, man. Of course, you are pursuing your PhD right now.
Yes.
Talk to us about your approach to your PhD. Obviously, you wouldn't want to give away too much, I'm sure, but
that's true.
Obviously, when it comes to your thesis, etc., what are you likely to look at in that regard?
I think it's exploring the mask as a participatory engagement, because I really like the whole thing of daily, every day being a ritual. I'm trying to redefine that. So I think right now we have established kind of a brand called Schoolie with my friend. He's called Hooligan and I'm called Skeptic, so it's in the midst of that. So how I'm approaching it is really from an unconventional way, where we're trying to basically like produce art and put it to the people, like the product and the performances that people have seen. But it's actually a thesis. It's like me seeing how this African narrative is actually can be put in the modern scape, and see how people are living with it, making it culture. So we have dabbled in shirts, events and everything, but people at core don't understand we're actually trying to make a framework that I'm studying as my thesis. So after I'm done, when I'm doing my thesis and hands-on,
incorporate all of this.
So I'm basically studying myself after a bit.
I was jokingly telling you about your dad having a medical background and you pursuing the arts from African background. Parents will tell you, you become a doctor, an engineer, etc.
That is true.
What has that been like for you, but also just, in terms of your own journey, your own identity and who you want to be in life?
I think if I had to be honest, my dad was basically what he did was basically say, go the other route. He was like, no, go the other route. But my mom also was able to culture that. So I had my curiosity. So I have an aunt in Zim. She's the one that basically cultured my craziness. So I would she would have a blender that's broken.
Craziness.
It was madness, because I'm thinking about all the small things I used to do. Take household appliances, break them apart and make these things. And she would culture that. But my dad was really just motivating that, but he mediated it. He was the person who basically allowed my left and right brain to be in cooperation with
Nice.
each other. So yeah, that's really how it worked.
Fantastic stuff. As far as, we as a people, should support, the creative industries, etc. How are you finding that? You've mentioned, of course, you guys do merchandise as well, etc.
Yes.
You have performances, etc. How would you describe the general response from the public and the general support from the public here?
I think we do currently. I think the general support is there. Yes. Galleries are getting open, I think, to the idea, and I would also understand the fact that, as we said, people are trying to keep to tradition, and what we're trying to do is push tradition. True. So from the National Archive, if you go and tell them like we're making an anime that is inspired by the mask, they'll be like, that's not really historical. But I think what we're trying to do, the reception has been beautiful. Fantastic. One thing that I would say, key component that I love about what's happening now, everybody's keen to learn.
Nice.
So at least people have an ear. And that's what we can always strive for, that as long as people are trying to learn, it's easier for everybody.
Amazing stuff. I mean, I was looking at the screen earlier on, just trying to see some of your work. And for those who are interested in also, getting a glimpse of your work, where can they find it? How can they go about it, etc.?
So if you want to find my work, currently we are in studio, so most of the things is just packed away in studio. But if
please don't let them gather too much dust.
No. I think if you want to see most of the work, you would see it at our Instagram page, which is at Schooli, which is SKHOOLI. Then also you can find it at Skeptic World, or my Mukesi Taku on Instagram, or at Hooligan RD, because he also is a cinematographer that follows me around. We follow each other basically. Yeah. So I think you can find my work. And for exhibitions, I think we're just really trying to find space and time. There is also a workshop that's happening on Friday at etc. on the 25th of October. Awesome. So buy your tickets if you want to find me there. By giving a slight workshop and teaching people how to design and so on. So
nice, man. I like that you're, imparting the knowledge, teaching the next person as well, instead of sitting with that knowledge. And how important is that for you?
So I
shared experiences here.
I think for me, what's crazy is I have a small brother. So every time I would come home and open the door, the first thing that he'd do would run and come and look at me for a very long time. Like you'd just be looking at, like, where have you been? What's really going on? So I think the same curiosity that my brother has, I feel like it's the same way that I would want to encourage the next kid. I actually do it for, like, I find so much joy in seeing kids work. They're like my best inspiration. So fantastic. It's really cool to give back to those generation, because if I can make a flying car, that means the next person can make whatever.
Exactly,
So as much as we're trying to push, it's really cool to make us push it to the stars and let the kids push it to the galaxies as far as possible as they can.
I like that. Your final message to our audience this morning who are watching this interview, and just a word of inspiration.
I think live. I try to live. I think live through it. In the morning, usually I have devotions, and one of the most key things that I appreciated today learning was, even though for me the mask also came from a dark place, because I also have I'm neurodiverse in the spectrum and stuff. So me having to push through that and having to be the person and expressing my feelings and who I am, the most key important thing that I hope everybody understands: don't be selfish, but be empathetic. It helps a whole lot, because you're able to not only convey yourself, but you're able to also engage with yourself in a very, very appropriate manner that allows the next person. So to really inspire anything is being obsessed and just love, and please care for any craft and anything that you're doing. Please care and be God-led, and everything will be fine.
Takudzwa Mukesi, thank you so much for being with us. Pleasure meeting you, pleasure engaging you, and all the best, man. Keep working, keep at it.
Thank you.
And keep pushing the African narrative.
Hey, well, that's what we can do, as we are the people. So,
fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
There you have it. He's a senior architectural technologist. He's an artist. He's a researcher. He wears a number of hats. Plays basketball as well. Takudzwa Mukesi talking to us there about, that is, the mask, which is really, dedicated towards identifying African rituality. And if you want to see his work, please check him out on Instagram, and of course support what he's doing. We continue right here, but for now we'll take a short break.